Warning, this episode highlights eating disorders, death, loss, and some other shit you might not want to hear. Listeners and viewers' discretion advised.
It's simply whatever. Hello. Welcome to the Simply Whatever podcast, a podcast where we talk about whatever, with whoever, filming wherever. I am your lovely host today. My name is Sam. And as for whoever, we have a very lovely friend of mine, a person who has been near and dear to my heart since
August 2010.
Middle school essentially.
Yep, going into 8th grade. I was going into 8th grade. You were going into...
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm older than you. Anyway, Miss Alex Kyllonen, ladies and gentlemen.
That's me.
That's you, girl. That's you. As for wherever, we are at a very different kind of setting than what you would kind of imagine for a podcast. We are at the Kimble Funeral Home here in Princeton, New Jersey. Shout out to Ron for letting us film here. It's very, very kind of him. It was super last minute, but he made it happen, and I'm telling you, he will make it happen for you and your loved ones. And as for whatever as our topic, we'll get into that a little bit later. Yeah, man, I mean, we met, as you said, August 2010. It was a very long time ago at this point.
Oh, it was ages ago.
It's like 11 years. And you could tell me if I'm wrong, you're the one with the photographic memory. We met at the duck pond, right? The infamous duck pond.
Where all the Middlesex kids would hang.
Oh my god. Only the cool kids.
Yeah, only the cool kids.
Right. Us. Classic. But no, I remember you being the emo girl who would sit on top of the slide area with your guitar.
I was the wannabe emo girl.
I think you did it better than most people because you actually had the look.
I had the look, but I didn't have the look. It was a rough time. It was a rough time. I would never go back to being 13 or 14 or whatever.
I think it was a rough time for all of us.
Yeah.
But I think you really started my hippie phase.
Ooh.
Yeah, because you would walk around with your guitar and play acoustic stuff, and we'd all be like, hey, play a song, and we'd sing together. That's when I started wearing those bandanas that go around your forehead.
I remember that.
Yeah, man.
You ever want to be Christopher Drew's
Oh my
Never
god.
Shout Never?
Shout out, Never Shout Never.
He was our jam, I guess, all of his music.
Absolutely. Literally everything. To this day, I can put on any song and know every word.
It's gotta be old school, though.
Oh, exactly. Happy?
Every day. All day.
Fantastic album. Yeah, man, I mean, we were such good friends, but I'm trying to stop saying but. It's something I'm working on in therapy, to stop saying but, because I feel like it takes away everything else you're saying beforehand.
It takes time. It takes practice. You're good.
It does. Thank you. We were such good friends for so long, and while being very good friends, I feel like we also encourage some negative behaviors,
yes,
so to speak, within each other.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But when we say that, I was as straight edge as it gets back in the day. I was I would never touch alcohol. I would never smoke anything. I wouldn't do anything. What my mom said goes, and I didn't even come from a strict household.
No, not at all.
My parents were very my parents were very authoritative.
Authoritarian?
No, authoritarian is barbarian.
Okay.
According to the rhyme that I used to memorize
it?
for my exam, yes. But authoritative is very middle of the line. They weren't too strict. They didn't believe in harsh punishment. They were very if you have a problem, you can talk to us, understanding type thing. So that's for me to be completely straight edge and whatever my mom says goes, it's weird because I didn't come from the type of household that you would think.
Right.
I mean, it was a great household. I just didn't come from
what would dictate that kind of behavior or
exactly.
style of child, I guess, so to speak.
Exactly. But
I remember the first time that I heard you curse, and that was jarring.
I had to have been 18 or 19.
Yeah, you never cursed.
I never cursed. Never. Not until I was at least 18 years old.
Which is insane to me, because, like, I remember we would all be throwing F-bombs, like,
and
crazy.
I would be sitting there like, drats!
Oh, but you said drats all the time.
But I did it to make people laugh, because I knew it was, like, a ridiculous word.
But it's amazing. Amazing. You're always so creative, too, with, like, the way that you, the word choices that you had. It was always very inspiring, especially since you were a songwriter. Like, it makes sense. It makes sense.
True.
But I'm gonna bring it back.
Yes,
I'm gonna bring it back real quick.
Yes.
Even though you were super straight edge, which 100% you were, and I absolutely was not, we still were such good friends. We still made it work for each other.
We did.
But we also had, like, some toxicity in between us that we fed into with each other.
Oh, absolutely.
It was kind of shitty, but we were also kids, you know? Like, we were young, and, but I know through, like, Facebook that you're doing a lot better now, and I'm really proud of you, and I'm really happy for you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. But I know we kind of didn't touch base, really, between graduating high school and literally now.
Yes.
So...
yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, so what's been going on? Like... I don't want to say what's new, but...
well, yeah. No, I feel that.
Yeah.
I mean, I graduated last May with my undergraduate degree with my bachelor's in social work. And then this May, I graduated from Rutgers with my master's in social work.
Nice. Congrats.
Thank you.
Of course.
I recently passed my state licensing exam to be a licensed social worker in the state of New Jersey.
New Jersey.
So... that's where I'm at now.
That's awesome.
With a lot of stuff in between, but that's, like, the major stuff.
Right. That's awesome, dude. I feel like a lot of people don't even make it to college, let alone out, let alone keep going further to get your master's.
It's because I'm only good at school.
You're good at a lot of things.
School I'm really good at.
But that's awesome. You know the thing that you have, and you have it going for you, and you make it work for you. Like, that's awesome. And
thank you.
Yeah, I'm really happy for you, and I'm really proud of you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I know we were both really sick for a long time.
Yes.
Really sick.
Really sick.
And I know that, you know, we touched on it a little bit earlier the last time we chatted, that it definitely has transpired into adulthood. I don't even know if that's the right word for it, transferred into adulthood, which really sucks. But I know things were kind of dark for you for a while. You want to touch on that a little bit, maybe?
Yeah. So... we're beating around the bush a little bit.
Yeah, I do it a lot.
Since we'll cut the suspense.
Okay.
We both related because we both struggled pretty badly from eating disorders.
Yeah.
From high school into adulthood.
Yeah.
When I was 19, I mean, I developed an eating disorder for the first time when I was 16. I struggled a lot with my relationship with my dad. I felt like I had no control over it. I felt like his caregiver at the age of 16. So in order to gain some control over my life, I developed an eating disorder. And that went through cycles of anorexia and bulimia.
Which I feel like is a huge, and I don't want to call it a trigger, but it's a huge, like segue. That's not even the right word for it, but huge segue to having an eating disorder is feeling that lack of control, so you get that control over something.
I remember thinking at some points, like, this isn't even about my weight anymore. This is about controlling the number that I see on the scale when I weigh myself.
Right.
Like, and I didn't know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
Because even an ounce, like a tenth of a pound, would leave me in tears.
Oh,
tears.
Man.
And when I was a senior in high school, I was skipping classes to binge and purge, and I would have my friends let me in, and my teachers would be like, "Alex, like, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
And I wouldn't tell them, but I thought that I was hiding everything. I thought I was so good at it.
You always think that. You always think that nobody knows.
I thought nobody knew. Everyone knew.
Right.
Everyone knew. And I didn't find that out until college.
Really?
Yeah, until like a couple of years ago.
Damn.
Like, that's embarrassing. Like, but I thought I was so sneaky.
Right.
So I graduated high school, went to college. When I was 19, it got really bad. I went into inpatient treatment for my eating disorder, and then a couple weeks after I got discharged, I went into residential treatment in Philadelphia for a month. I remember, like, my heart was in horrible condition. My kidneys, just all around, like, it was bad. It was bad. And the thing about it, though, and I think we have this in common too, is that I was never that, like, tiny little stick figure, like, Barbie doll type girl. I was always overweight. Right. And it was a lot harder for people to detect. And now eating disorders come in all shapes, sizes, colors.
Absolutely.
Everything. Yeah. You can't tell by looking at someone if they have an eating disorder. And I was one of those cases, and I think you were too.
Absolutely, I was.
You just can't tell.
Even to this day, like, I'll bring it, because I'm a lot more vocal about it now, and people are always so baffled, and I'm like, dude, I have been sick since I was a kid, like, multitudes of things, but, like, I have been, and I mean, granted, you know, and you can probably agree with this, it doesn't necessarily go away. You just learn how to figure it out and make it work for you and manage it in a healthy way. Yeah. And I've been in the same boat since I want to say around 16 as well, like around the same age.
Yeah. And I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult because you do kind of learn how to live with it. And I remember, like, being so euphoric at times, but at the same time, I was in such a dark place. It was like this sense of euphoria, but at the same time, such darkness.
Exactly.
And, you know, and it's hard because I don't even know, like, I struggled so bad, and I know you did too. Yeah. And that's part of the reason I went into social work to begin with, was because I wanted to work with eating disorder patients. Right. And it evolved from there, like,
on how you got to where you are now, essentially.
Because I felt as though, like, in order to treat eating disorders, you have to really understand them. And I feel like that's a thing with a lot of different areas. Yeah. Addiction of any kind.
You have to have seen it on a first-hand experience, or at least second-hand through a loved one.
Yeah, like, exactly. And have a firm understanding, because if you haven't experienced those emotions or have, like, no understanding of those feelings, you won't know how to treat them, because it's such a misunderstood illness. Yeah, such a misunderstood illness. It's more than you should just eat or you should just stop purging.
No, absolutely not. Because it doesn't work that way. It's one of those things, and I feel like I to be fair, I didn't even know this when it had started for me, because I was in the same boat where it came from that lack of control of everything between my home life, my mom being sick, being shitty in school, you know, I was in an abusive relationship all at the same time. There was so much going on that I couldn't control it, so I immediately went to, okay, well, I can control food.
This is what I can control.
Yeah, and I now can kind of see it in other people, or at least see it developing in that same behavior, so to speak, of, okay, I see where you're going with this, stop it now. Yeah. Because I didn't know back then how physically addicting it is. It's not as addicting mentally, because I was at a point where I want to stop now. I don't want to do this anymore. But I would get so sick if I tried to get better. Yep. And I couldn't get better without any form of intervention, which sucked. I mean, granted, I personally never went into any inpatient. I was lucky enough to have lived with somebody who had experienced it themselves and kind of coaxed me out of it, so to speak. But to this day, I'm still dealing with the repercussions. I still can't eat certain things without having a problem. I'm on daily medications for my stomach issues now that almost strictly resulted from the disordered eating throughout the years. Exactly. You know, I wanted to share some fun facts. They're not fun. Nothing about them is fun.
They're not fun, but they're interesting. Yeah. They're facts.
They're facts. I have a piece of paper. And with your experience as well, maybe you can tell me if any of these are correct or incorrect. Maybe I don't know how to find my sources. It's more common in women. Yes and no.
Yes, because women are more likely to admit to it.
Right.
Women are more likely to seek treatment than men.
Exactly.
So most of the cases that we see are usually women.
But there are a lot of men who have eating disorders too.
Men are likely equally as affected.
Yes. And I've seen it. I know a lot of guys who have eating disorders, a lot of them. And this one I thought was really interesting just because I'm in the dental field now. It can take only 6 months until your teeth are fully damaged and only a couple weeks until you already start having major heart issues.
Oh, yeah.
Which is wild to me. I did not know it would be that quick. Like,
yeah, because the heart's a muscle, and you know the electrolytes. I'm not good at science. I just know that like sodium levels, electrolytes, it all impacts your heart.
Right.
So yeah, it's crazy.
And this one was wild to me. How we were touching that, like, there's not a lot of education on it.
Mm-hmm.
There's 30% of people are 30% of people with bulimia are likely to relapse. That's a huge number. 30%.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't there more research on eating disorders when you have that high of a relapse rate?
Well, you know, the other thing too is that I think that the eating disorder that gets a lot of attention is anorexia.
Yeah.
This is just from my experience in treatment.
Right.
I felt as though when I was going through it as a kid dealing with bulimia, it was a lot harder to treat me than, because it wasn't about monitoring my weight and like restoring my weight, and it wasn't about getting me to eat, because I could eat.
Right.
It was about, and the way that they approach it oftentimes is meal plans. And for me, when I would restrict my meal plan to a certain number of calories, I felt like I was restricting, and it would make me want to binge more.
Gotcha.
So it
triggered that part of it. And
yes. So I struggled with that. And that might not be everyone's experience. That's just my experience coming from somebody in treatment who'd suffered for a long time. Everyone's experience is different. But yeah, you would think that there would be more like research and stuff.
Wild to me, especially with bulimia. Like, I did a lot of like binging, purging behavior back in the day, but it was actually only, oh my God, 2020 happened. So I guess 3 years ago now. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Yeah, about like 3 years ago, that's what I was saying. I was lucky enough to stay at a friend's house. I got very, very sick. I was restricting to a point where, like, I don't know how I wasn't actually dead. Like, I would have to take half stairs at a time, like, just going to bed. Like, I'd have to take half, sit and chill, and then keep going. I don't know how I held a job for as long as I did, like, and not regularly pass out. I was just not eating, ever. And it was awful. And then when I would try to reintroduce food back, I would get violently ill. I either wasn't able to process it, wasn't able to digest it. That leads me to my next fun fact of how extremely addictive it actually is. Your body cannot sustain itself on that type of lifestyle for that long.
Exactly, and that's why crash diets and stuff like that are so often advertised on the cover of magazines all the time, they don't work.
Yeah.
They don't work, they're not worth it. Even if they do work for a little while, your body can't.
No.
It goes into attack mode, and it's not sustainable.
No.
It's not sustainable.
Not at all. So those were my fun facts on bulimia. I keep calling them fun facts, but nothing about them are fun.
Yeah, that's all right.
My facts for anorexia it has a mortality rate of 10%. Mm-hmm. So you're telling me that 30% of bulimics are more likely to relapse, and 10%, all right, I guess that's the right way to say it, 10% of anorexics are dying. Mm-hmm. That's a huge number. That's a lot. Maybe it's not, maybe it's just me, but like, why isn't there more? Yeah, like, oh, mind you, I got these fun facts from the internet. I know how to find sources. I just didn't write them down. I promise these are as close to realistic as they possibly can be. And this one I thought was super interesting. Eating disorders in general have increased by 36% every 5 years since the 50s.
It makes, thinking about it, the way that we view what a normal, average, beautiful body is, the way that society views beauty has changed so much. Yeah. And we just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Exactly. I think now with like we have a lot more social awareness in general. Yeah. So I think that like people are starting to understand, but I know the early 2000s. Oh, it was bad. It was bad, man. And then that's where we grew up in, which is, walking around the mall and seeing ribs everywhere you go. Like, of course you're going to start to think that's your standard of beauty, like, when it's not. We're both beautiful as women. Psh. Exactly. And then this one was kind of more generic, the risks that come with both, anemia, heart problems, as we mentioned, bone loss. And this actually happened to me. Loss of a period is extremely common in it. Like, I straight up didn't have a period for almost 6 months. And I was like, well, I guess I'm never having kids. Oh, well, and that's another thing that I feel like
you know, we're in a society that glamorizes being super tiny. Whatever you gotta do, you gotta be super skinny. When you're not thinking like, okay, but then you can never eat anything. You are damaging your body to extremes. And then if you are a woman, you lose your period, and then what? Like, I mean, I'm not trying to be in like a weird way. Like, if you don't want to have kids, you don't want to have kids. But what if you do? And you permanently lose your period for so long that you lose that opportunity.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, it's definitely a difficult thing to navigate, and it's so important that if anybody does show signs or symptoms of an eating disorder, if you think you might be affected, reach out to somebody that will help, because there are people out there.
Absolutely.
There are people that will be able to help you, and this doesn't have to be your life.
No, not at free and all. And then as my last touch on this, and I thought this was really interesting, kind of on the anorexia standpoint, to kind of break down any stigmas, less than 6% of people with anorexia are actually diagnosed as underweight.
So yes,
Which is
atypical anorexia. So and it's like a subcategory of an eating disorder. Atypical anorexia, eating disorders otherwise specified.
EDNOS, right?
Yes.
Is that what they call it? Yeah.
Yes, but well, that was the DSM-4. The DSM-5, it's OSFED.
Oh, okay.
I believe that's what it is. But yes, they don't meet the clinical like diagnostics or the diagnostic criteria for anorexia.
So speaking of, you know, our little talk that we just, I thought it was really important to touch on eating disorders, especially while we have this time, this platform, and with our history.
Absolutely.
With eating disorders being the deadliest mental illness, I'm going to use this as a segue. The reason we're in a funeral parlor today, the reason that Kimble Funeral Home was kind enough to have us here is because Alex is not just a very near and dear friend of mine of 11 years now running. You specialize in a little something, don't ya?
Yes. So I graduated from Rutgers, as I said earlier, with my master's degree in social work. My concentration was in grief, loss, bereavement, that kind of area. I work in a funeral home. I don't work in this funeral home, but I do work in one closer to home. And I've been doing that for about 6 months. Always have had an interest in the field, though, I think.
That's awesome. What got you, like, what made you want to study death? It's the simplest way to phrase that.
Okay, so, like, I didn't, like, just wake up one morning and decide I want to work in a funeral home.
Yeah.
It didn't go like that. So when I was 7 years old, my grandmother died.
Okay.
I was, like, a very, like, tumultuous, is that, like, a good word to use? Like, a crazy time in my life.
Yeah.
My parents were getting divorced, so I was kind of grieving the loss of my grandmother, grieving the loss of my parents and my childhood as I had known it up to that point, because, you know, I was losing a lot.
Right.
I developed really bad anxiety. I had convinced myself on several different occasions that I was going to die. I literally thought, like, I'm going to die tonight. And, like, there was no reason to think that. Like, I didn't live in a violent household. I lived in tiny little suburban Middlesex, New Jersey. There was nothing to worry about. It was just me, like, something's going to go wrong in my body and I'm just going to die. And obviously this is a little less than 20 years ago, so I'm still here. So I got fascinated in death, about death, when I was 7 in second grade. After my grandmother died, I would check out of the school library books about death.
Really?
And I remember one day at recess, my librarian and my second grade teacher talking to each other, like, concerned, like...
She always picks out books about death, like, we need to talk to her mom.
Oh my God.
And the 7-year-old me was sitting there like,
I'm interested in it.
I didn't say anything, but I took that to heart, and I never picked out another book about that again. I kind of just, like, hid that part of me away. And my mom was aware. My mom was like, well, you just lost somebody, really? Like,
you're trying to rationalize.
Me for a while. Yeah, like, my mom didn't see a problem. My mom is a teacher, too, so she's got, like, she deals with, like, special education. She deals with, she's a teacher. Like, she knows the development and stuff like that of children. So I think, you know, if I needed help, my mom would be the first one to take me to therapy. And she has. So... You know, and then when I was 15, my grandfather died, and he was my best friend. And at that point, I became kind of, like, interested in, like, okay, so, like, what happens when you die?
Right.
And I started, like, to, like, Google it and stuff, like, and, like, read stuff. And my mom was like,
You know, Alex, like, you've always had this, like, kind of morbid curiosity, like maybe like when you graduate high school you should go to mortuary school.
And I was like,
No, like I could never be alone in a funeral home by myself.
and it's not because of the deceased people.
Right.
It's because of ghosts, because I believe in that stuff.
That's me.
That's why
That's
I'm
me.
scared. Like, I'm not afraid of the people. That was someone's grandfather, that was someone's father, mother, grandmother. Like,
Right.
that's perfectly fine. They don't bother me. That's, you know,
It's the
all
spirit
respect.
itself.
It's the ghost. Like,
It's
and
the idea
not
that
even the
someone might
ghosts.
be sitting there right now.
Exactly,
Yep.
exactly. Needless to say, since I now work in a funeral home, I don't have that fear anymore. All the time, I'm comfortable with it. I've come to accept whatever. Like,
Right.
So I was like, no way, I could not do that. I will never. Not that I didn't want to, it's just that I would be too scared. So I kind of pushed that away again. And then when I was 21, what do you know? I get a phone call. Hey, Alex, come to the ICU. We don't know what happened, but here's your dad. And then the very next day, me and my sister had to make the decision to take him off of life support.
Oh, man.
And
you and your sister had to make the choice?
Yes, we had to make the choice because we were the next of kin.
Oh, right.
And me being the oldest, it was kind of like, you know, like, what do we do?
Yeah, and you had to, like, guide her in that sense.
Yes.
Damn.
And, I mean, I've always been in a tug of war with that decision, but when it comes down to it is, like I mentioned earlier, you know, my dad struggled, I didn't mention this part, but my dad struggled with alcoholism. He was one of the most brilliant people I have ever met. So smart. He could take apart a computer and put it back together. He was a brilliant writer.
Right.
Oh my God, he was incredible. But he was so stupid. At the same time, he was so dumb, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. And
They
now
usually
that,
are.
Yes,
They usually are.
exactly. And now that I understand, like now that I went into social work, I've taken classes on addiction, stuff like that. I understand a little bit more, and dealing with my own eating disorder. At the end of his life, I didn't know it was the end of his life. He died unexpectedly, but I kind of started to get it. I started to get it more.
Right.
And after he died, I did a lot more work on trying to understand. So now, like, I get it. Now I get why it was so difficult for him.
Yeah.
But that was a really difficult part, of a huge contributing factor to my eating disorder. And we had a very rocky relationship. He was my best friend when I was a kid, but as I grew up, I was more of a parent to him than he was to me.
And that's the downside of addiction.
And I
really.
loved him to death. I loved him. He was hysterical. He was brilliant. You know, I get my sense of humor from him. I get a lot from him.
Yeah.
And it's tragic, but when he died, I became very interested, and I was 21. So at that time, it was like, okay, like I'm a year away from graduating college.
Yeah.
My bachelor's degree. I'm already too invested in this program to just quit. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna I'll see what happens. I'm gonna go get my master's, and we'll see what happens.
Go from there, essentially.
And then I ended up just on a whim applying to a job at a funeral home, and they hired me. And
That's amazing.
And then from there,
Did you really just like fill out an application?
I did.
Send a resume?
I did. I was on Indeed one day. I saw that it was the only job opening for that, like for what I could do.
Right.
And I sent in a resume. They called me and they were like, "Hey."
That's
Come in.
amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for that opportunity because I graduated May 17th and I started mortuary school on May 17th as well.
Oh, wow. Literally
Yep.
picked up right from there.
Yep.
That
Very
is
same day.
awesome.
Yep.
Oh, Alex. So what do you do at the funeral home? What do you do?
I do everything that
Okay.
I am allowed to do legally. So I do not do the actual process of embalming, which is preserving the body, basically like preserving the body so it's good, you know, so it can be viewed.
Right.
Ultimately for the viewing. I do help with the preparation of the body, the cleaning, the sanitation process. I also help with setting the features, which I won't go into
Like
too much
makeup
detail.
wise? Like,
I haven't done makeup,
Okay.
but it's like with the eyes and the jaw, and I don't want to gross
right,
anyone else,
right.
so I won't go into.
So I like to phrase it this way: graphics warning and trigger warning. That's basically
Yeah.
So I do this, I say it, and then I put it in post. So it'll be like here,
Yeah.
graphic warning, audio, graphic warning. Skip ahead 30 seconds because there are some people who are interested,
Yeah.
like me. I'm
Yes.
interested. So please share your Share your knowledge if you're comfortable.
I'm comfortable. I love talking about this stuff. I
Awesome.
find it very interesting.
So
and
do I.
It has helped me a lot in the grieving process with my father. So, eye caps. It's when you pass away, the fluids kind of...
They come out.
They go
I
down.
know that.
Yeah, they like sink, so your eyes kind of deflate a little bit. So you put in eye caps. You have to not sew the jaw shut, but you have to
like screw it?
No, it's a needle gun. You put a needle gun in, top, bottom, and then you twist.
That's
Yeah,
wild. Because the
but
jaw
you
will
will-
open?
Yes, because you want to keep it closed, and you put
Right.
Vaseline in it. Sometimes if it's an elderly person who doesn't have teeth, we'll put in, I forget what they call it. It's kind of like an eye cap, but it's like a mouth. It's for the mouth. It gives them the shape of having teeth.
Wow.
You know,
I honestly never knew that. I thought like their eyes and just... I knew the fluids went away. I knew that. Because
that's through the embalming processes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they'll... Not all of them come out, but what we do is, you know, a majority of them, they go through your veins and your arteries. And
yeah.
I'm not good at science, but I know what it is.
Yeah.
I just don't know how to explain it scientifically.
That's fair.
And I'm still relatively new to this field, so
yeah.
Don't come at me.
I don't think anyone's going to come at you for sharing this. But that's fascinating. I really never knew that there were things that go in your eyeballs.
There's a lot. There is a lot that
Yeah.
goes into it that I had no idea about until I was actually sitting there observing my first embalming.
I mean, one of the things that I recently learned about, like, the beginning stages of prepping a body, so to speak, and I learned this from the TV show that's also kind of a podcast called The Midnight Gospel. Watch it on Netflix. It's fire TV show. They were doing something similar where they were talking about death and the grieving process and things like that. And one of the things that they touched on that I really never knew was when a person dies, you don't have to ship the body off right away. It doesn't immediately become toxic. I thought it was like, oh, they're dead, get it out of here. That bacteria is going to start brewing. You can sit with the body for like 3 hours if you wanted.
You can. I mean...
Most people don't, but...
Yeah, but the changes within the body, they start happening immediately, but they're not necessarily visible. Like, right as you die, there's processes with bacteria and... I don't know the technical terms,
no, it's
but
okay. You're fine.
There's stuff that starts happening right away.
Right. I remember...
The decomposition process.
Exactly.
Starts happening immediately, but it's not necessarily visible.
Right.
Also depends on the environment you're in, how long it takes... It depends on a lot
There's
of things.
There's lots of factors.
Yeah. But, yeah, you're not gonna... I mean, I have transferred bodies. Another thing that I do is I pick up individuals from their place of death and transport them back to the funeral home. But I've transported individuals who have passed days before, you know, like...
Oh, really?
And, before they're prepared, before they have any embalming. I mean... Of course, we're wearing full PPE.
Yeah, I'm assuming, yeah.
And they're not in, like, they're not, like, directly... I don't want to... Okay. I don't want to sound bad. Like, they're in a body bag.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a body bag, yeah.
Or, like, sheets or something like that to cover them up. And that a lot of that is to respect the deceased.
The deceased, right.
Respecting their privacy and... dignity, ultimately.
Absolutely.
Which is something that I completely and utterly think is so important. Respecting their dignity.
Because it's still a person at the end of the day.
It's still a person. It's still somebody's father. It's still someone's mother. Like,
I remember when my mom passed, I mean, granted, everything about that was a blur. The whole year, the months, the weeks, all of it is just, there's high points and then the rest of it is gone.
Absolutely.
But even like the day that she passed, which was that's a whole story in its own that I can share later at another time. Mm-hmm. But when it happened, right, like when she passed, almost instantaneously, I saw my aunt run from the kitchen to her bed. We were at home when she was on hospice, and I had rolls upon rolls of paper towels with her, and I was like, very confused. It was one of those things where I was so focused on the idea that my mom had died that I caught it out of the corner of my eye, but didn't
process.
So I ran. Mm-hmm. And I didn't find out until much later that, you know, what you were saying about the decomposition process, that that starts almost immediately. Yeah. You know, that everything just comes out, which is crazy.
And like, the fact of the matter is that death is both ugly
Yeah.
and beautiful
Right.
at the same time.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, and this is kind of going also back to the eating disorders thing, is that no one is pretty when they die.
Nope.
So, and then that's just the thing. We make you pretty. If that's what your wishes are, of course.
Absolutely.
Depending on the family's wishes and cultural beliefs and stuff like that. We can help make that final memory of your loved one, one that you want to remember, that will help with your grieving process. But death can be ugly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, speaking of the grieving process, so what is your role as a grievance social worker, essentially? Like, aside from working in the funeral home with the bodies and helping preparations, with the social work aspect, what's your role in the process?
So I got very lucky that my major and my master's degree was in social work, and that so much social work and people skills goes into working in a funeral home.
Absolutely.
So it's like my two interests combined.
Aww.
So I work with families. A lot of the time, I'm the doorman, technically apprentice. Like, I greet the families when they come in. I don't do the arrangements because I'm not licensed yet, but I'm allowed to sit in on them. But I don't have a part in that.
Right.
But basically, I just work to make sure that the families are the most comfortable and that they can be. And I'm basically there as a listening ear. I make sure that everything that they need is there. I set up the room. I make sure that this final memory of their loved one is the best that it can possibly be. And I like to know that I'm able to help make someone's worst day ever a little bit better. Because I know that when my father died, the funeral director there, who I've kept a relationship with,
right,
it was an incredible service, and it helped so much to know that somebody who didn't even know him cared that much, you know?
Right, yeah.
So,
I mean, that was kind of how my experience with my mom's funeral was. I'm not gonna lie, I feel bad about it looking back, but I kind of raised hell in that funeral home when we were planning everything. And granted, you know, I'm just going to cut myself some slack. I was 19. You know, I was a teenager.
You were 18.
I had just turned 19.
No, you had just turned 18. It was 2014.
Oh my god. You're right.
I know.
It was before I went to college.
I know, I'm right.
Why did I think I was 19? Oh, because 19 was a different big point in my life. It all blurs together, man. You're right. I had just turned 18 because it was right after high school.
I know.
I'm trash, man. I'm trash. Anyway, trauma. What are you gonna do?
That's understandable.
Right. And my mom was like me, or no, I was like my mom, where we wear dark makeup lightly. You know, we don't cake on dark makeup. And I really was heavy on that with the funeral director of, listen, she needs to be perfect. Because I was with my mom a couple months before she passed. It was just me and her. And she had a mental breakdown about how ugly she was going to be at her funeral. Like, sobbing about, you know, because she was really sick. She was losing her hair. She was super underweight. She was not healthy. And she was like, I'm going to be hideous at my own funeral. Like, you know, and that broke my heart. So I was like, if there's one thing this woman's getting, she's going to be fucking beautiful.
Absolutely.
You know, so I feel like that you were probably the person I talked to, but at that funeral parlor, essentially.
Yeah.
So since you know, I have to ask, and if you can't share, I don't know if this is like a HIPAA thing or not, but if you can't share, that's fine. But I need to know, what kind of crazy experiences or stories do you have? Because you gotta have some, right? Like,
I do have, like, so a couple of weeks ago, and I told, like, one of my coworkers about this, who her mother-in-law is the owner of the funeral home. But I kept this a secret because I was like, they're not going to believe me. Like, they're just not going to believe me. So I was like, I'm not going to tell them.
right.
So I was sitting there, I was working, and listen, I'm there alone. I'm there by myself. I'm just kind of like doing like office stuff.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I hear a woman sobbing. Now, like, there are surveillance cameras all over the property in like every room.
Right.
No one is on the property. No one is in the building. I'm like, what? Like, someone is sobbing?
Stop.
And like right before
Was it
that,
a ghost?
I think it was a ghost, because the night before I was there and I was cleaning the chapel after a visitation, And I swore, like, I saw a shadow just go past the door.
It.
And I was like, no, like, that's nothing. Like, this is a figment of my imagination. I'm dreaming this up right now.
Like, you're tired. Like,
exactly.
yeah.
It was 11 o'clock at night. I was like, no, like, I'm good. I wasn't good. I mean, I was good then, but then I found out the next day I wasn't so good. But, like, the thing is, though, is I never got, like, this, like, feeling of fear. It was more just like, weird.
That happened. Like,
yeah. Like, I was just like, interesting. It was more like, I didn't feel, like, scared. I didn't feel like it was anything evil. Like, I didn't feel like any of that. I was just like, okay. All right.
Okay.
Like, I kind of, like, I believe in that stuff so much. But then, at the same time, I'm, like, also the first person to be like, no, there's got to be an explanation for that.
Right.
And that's just me.
Oh,
that's
my God.
That's my crazy story.
At least of the last couple weeks. Like,
yeah, that I can think of off the top of my head.
Oh, my God. That's terrifying. I mean, that's always what my brain goes to. Like, I don't like being in churches alone. I don't like being in funeral parlors alone.
You know, I don't like being in churches alone either. And
yeah.
like, I always thought that I was weird for that.
No.
I just wasn't brought up religiously. But
right.
I just thought it was weird because, like, I've seen so many, like, movies about, like, exorcisms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, I think that ruined churches for me. And, like, don't get me wrong, I think they're beautiful.
Yeah.
They are great places.
Yeah.
I just watch too many horror movies.
Right. And I grew up very religious. Very religious. They scare the crap out of me, man. They're really creepy.
I think it's, like, the old, like, I don't know if it's architecture, but, like, very, like, old kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, I think they're beautiful.
Absolutely. I don't think I've ever been in, like, an ugly church. They're always gorgeous.
They are.
Speaking of churches, you know, and I kind of want to touch base because it is something that we share. Having, you know, lost our parents as young as you were what, 20 you said? 21?
21.
Yeah, and I was 18. Like, we were extremely young. Do you think that has any... I mean, obviously, we know that you losing your dad is what ultimately put the, what is it, hammer on the head or something? Hammer to the nail?
Yeah, something like that.
Nail in the coffin.
That's a good one.
Thank you. Of, you know, you working at a funeral parlor and really propelled that interest in death. Like, but would you say that it has affected your, you know, any other way that you view life or anything like that? How you live your life? Like losing someone so young, I guess.
So, I think that I spent so much time trying to not be my dad in terms of the addiction aspect. And, I didn't drink alcohol till I was almost 23 years old. I kind of, like, hit a point where I was like, you know what, I'm not him.
Yeah.
There are many good qualities that I got from him. There are some bad qualities that I've gotten from him. But I can monitor myself, and I'm aware. I have that awareness of the signs, and especially having an eating disorder, too.
Absolutely.
I'm aware now. Like, I'm much more aware. And plus, I have the coping skills. I need strategies to use if I feel like, and I don't have a drinking problem.
Right.
Thankfully, that is one good thing that I got from my dad, is knowing what I didn't want to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I mean, I guess the death of my dad also, like, I have an awful sense of humor. And it's not awful. I have a great sense of humor, but...
You do. You definitely do.
My dead dad jokes, I have not cracked a dead dad joke yet.
I was going to say, I've been waiting for it. Like,
the opportunity just hasn't risen yet.
That's fair.
So, like...
You gotta hit us with one at least before we end. We need at least one.
Well, my dad was really good with social distancing, because no matter how close I get to him, he'll always be at least 6 feet away from me.
Oh my god. Oh my
god.
god.
He's 6 feet
He's
under.
6 feet under? Nice.
Yeah.
Classic.
So that's one.
That was
and
nice.
I did come up with that one myself.
Good job.
Let's see. I can't think of any off the top of my head right now.
That's fine.
They're usually, like, improvised. Like, usually, like, they just come to me.
I get that. I'm the classic, like, if you hit me with the yo mama joke, I probably shouldn't, but I just look at him like, my mom's dead. Yeah, like, it's just...
Yeah.
Or just, I gotta be a dick about
someone's
it.
like, oh, my dad just texted me, and I'm like, I haven't gotten a text from my dad in 2.5 years. Like...
I like that. That's a good one.
Stuff like that.
That's
it's
a good one.
Stuff like that. Or I'll be like, oh, mine didn't. Like, yes. So It has affected my sense of humor. And, you know, the thing is, though, and I told you this when we were talking a couple weeks ago, my dad would love these jokes. I guarantee if he is around at all in any sense of the universe, he is cracking up at these jokes because he knows damn well I get this sense of humor from him. He's the person. That. So I just know that that's awesome. He had an insane sense of humor. So
yeah, I mean, I know I also definitely got a lot from my mom, a lot. But like my whole thing, and you know, call it, you know, and call it whatever you want to call it. But like my whole thing, I think probably because our situations were a little bit different on our relationships that we had with our parents. Like my mom was. I mean, obviously they were both sick, but my mom was like physically unable to do a lot of things because she got sick when I was 4. So like I've never gone swimming together, you know, for something as simple as that, like getting in a pool. I've never been in I mean, I was in a pool once with my mom. It's in a picture, but I was like 2. Yeah. It doesn't count for me. But I've never like been in the ocean with my mom, and we grew up down the shore, you know, something as simple as that, like never really went on a roller coaster with her, anything like that. So my whole like stance of living has always been living for her, you know, like doing all the things that she couldn't do, all the crazy shit that I do all the fucking time, whenever I get my spontaneity from wanting her to live vicariously through me, even though she has passed, you know, that's always been my thing. And trying to, you know, as morbid as it may be, just, I mean, at least I'm not dead, you know, like, I'm still here. I'm still here.
You're still here.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's true. It's true.
Right. So you are, I know I feel like I keep saying you're a professional. Well, you're a professional. What's the word that we were saying earlier?
I'm a professional death expert.
Expert.
I have to like toy around with that.
Yeah, just to kind of, a death expert. An expert on death.
Yeah.
So what would you say is like, I mean, we know the grieving process as a whole is like, you know, you're sad, angered, whatever like the steps are. But if somebody is going through that right now, what would you say is, do you have any advice, you know, to share?
So grief is not linear. It looks different for absolutely everyone. There are days where you're going to be okay, and you know, they'll cross your mind maybe once or twice, and there are other days where you're just going to be thinking about them all day, and you're going to want to sit in bed and cry, and
absolutely,
you know, or you'll see something that like I know I visited my grandfather. And my grandfather and my dad, I visited him last weekend, and they're like the spitting image. Like that's what my dad would look like when he gets older, like when he got older, if he were to, you know. But that was like weird. It was weird for me, like to see my grandfather. It's not the first time I've seen him. It's the first time I've seen him since COVID.
Okay. So it's been a while.
Yeah, but it's just like, wow, like I'm like kind of looking at my dad, but like not really, and it's just like little things that will trigger it. Like I will start sobbing, like listening to a song that he had, or stupid things like not knowing what his favorite flavor ice cream is. Like I know that I knew at some point, and but now I can't remember. Like what was it? And you know, like it's things like that, and like I'll just sob uncontrollably. Other times I'm so angry at him. So like it's unpredictable, and it's different for absolutely every person. And my advice is to just keep going. Surround yourself with people and loved ones who are there for you, who support you unconditionally, who will understand that you're going to have some good days, you're going to have some bad days. And don't let anybody dictate when you should be done grieving, because you don't stop. You don't stop grieving. I mean, grief is lifelong. You learn how to deal with it, you learn how to manage it, but you don't stop.
Right.
And that's okay. And just to reiterate again, that is okay.
This has been awesome.
It's been real
and deep, and we told a lot of stories and found out some wild shit. And
live for it.
Yeah, this was very nice. I can't wait for people to chime in and let us know what they think.
Yes, I love reading comments.
I love comments. Leave all the comments.
Leave comments, and if you don't watch this, I'm very offended.
Yeah, as you should be. Everybody should watch it. And you know, please, if you're going to leave a comment, don't be an asshole about it. Just try to be nice. That would be great. And now that I've said that, of course, it's going to be flooded with awful things. But we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
It is what it is.
Yeah, this is anything you want to add in? Anyone you want to shout out? Anything?
Thank you for listening. Thank you for having me and listening to my life that is surrounded by death.
Of course, I'm here for it.
I love talking about it. Not a lot of people like to hear about it, so I
Well,
appreciate listening.
Hopefully today's listeners or whatever, whenever this gets posted, hopefully they will tune in and learn a little something new.
Yeah,
And
hopefully
they
you
like
have
to talk.
some listeners with a morbid curiosity like us.
I think a lot of people do. I want to shout out Kimble Funeral Home. I want to shout out Ron, the owner, funeral director, I guess would be.
Well,
thank you. You're amazing.
Thank you very much.
Place is very, very adorable and cute, and I recommend anybody who has listened to this podcast, any family members, friends, like, please check out this place. It's in Princeton, New Jersey. It looks like a cute little house. Like, you would have no idea. It's very homey and sweet in here. I also want to touch on something real quick, naturally. So we had, when I first came up with this idea to do the second episode, it had been a month since the first episode came out, and I was like, oh man, like I gotta stick with a frequency of some sort, whether it's once a month, every 2 weeks, whatever the case is. But I ended up getting really sick from added stress and stuff, and one of the reasons I decided to go through with an episode about death is because my grandmother is actively dying as we speak. She has been given a timeline, to phrase it that way, I guess, right? Like an end time, basically. Things are really weird in my life right now as a 25-year-old woman doing the damn thing. But I appreciate all of you for, those of you who know and who have reached out, those of you who tuned into the podcast, only listened to the first 5 minutes. Maybe you got this far. That's awesome. I'm really appreciative, and I want you all to, I want you to hug your loved ones tonight, and I really want you to cherish everybody who's around, because
Life's too short.
Life's too short. Life's too short. We do not make it out alive. We do not.
Nobody makes it out alive.
Nobody does. Yeah, man. This has been the Simply Whatever podcast. I'm Sam.
I'm Alex.
Tune in next time for episode 3, man.
Catch you later.
The next episode's gonna be wild. I already have it planned. Tune in. It's gonna be dope. All right, man. Bye. If you or a loved one is struggling with an eating disorder, coping with loss, or any form of a mental illness, you are not alone. Reach out to friends, family, or a licensed professional for help.